regional chair, and all you elders, and more importantly, the residents. So my task here is very simple. I have been tasked with just giving you a brief history and overview of this controversy. How did it arise and where it is coming from? I know there are lots of questions. So before the Vice President comes to speak to you about all of the consequences and issues arising out of this Guyana-Venezuela controversy that we're hearing so much about, but just to give you a brief overview of where this controversy, how it first started. And it is a long narrative, so I will try to keep it very short, but listen carefully, because misinformation is the greatest disadvantage that we have in this issue. We have to be informed. Okay, so just listen to my brief overview of the history. So this narrative and this issue with Venezuela started a long time ago, in the second half of the 19th century. So this is 18-something. We have a dispute arose regarding the boundary between Venezuela, and at that time we were British Guyana. We were owned by the British. And this dispute arose, and it became so, the United States took Venezuela's side in the dispute, because it had a doctrine at the time where they were against the colonial power, and the colonial power at that time was Britain, and Britain was the one that was our colonial power, because we were British Guyana. And the U.S. and Britain fought, and the tensions has arisen so high that U.S. almost declared war against Britain. And so, but international diplomacy prevailed, and U.S. and Great Britain, the Venezuela and Great Britain, being adjudicated and facilitated by the United Nations, by the United States. Now, the United States were the ones who took Venezuela's side, and they were the facilitator. And in 1899, this is how the arbitration award came about, where the U.S. facilitated the signing of the agreement to settle this dispute once and for all, the dispute of the boundaries. All of the parties, Venezuela and British Guyana, which is now Guyana, agreed that this would be a full, perfect, and final settlement of the entire dispute. In fact, you had the best judges from the United States, the best judges from Great Britain hearing this matter. We had thousands, almost 2,000 hours of evidence being heard. It was a robust tribunal that was heard in 1899 to hear and settle this dispute, this boundary dispute. So you heard evidence from Venezuela's side. Venezuela had their lawyers presented, and British Guyana had their lawyers present. And coming out of that, it was a robust and an extensive, with recognized and educated jurists who heard the matter. And so it was in 1899 that this tribunal who heard this case, they delivered the award of the boundary that was settled between Guyana and Venezuela. Now this boundary, when the award was given, Venezuela went right away to ratify this settlement in their courts, make it part of their domestic law. In fact, when a boundary is settled, you have to send out surveyors. They send their surveyors out right away. They were so happy with the granting of the boundaries that the arbitrators gave, that they sent out their surveyors right away. They drew a map out. This is in the 1899. The order was given. Between 1900 and 1905, they demarcated, and they went and the surveyors drew out their map. Now this map, they made it, P.S., can you show me the map? They made this map the official map of Venezuela. They made it part of their laws. In 1905, they signed an agreement. Their commissioners, and right here you have Venezuela, and commissioners signed the demarcation. This is the map and the agreement that they signed in 1905, making it part of their laws. They were very meticulous about the process. The documents show and history shows that even small practical variations in drawing out these boundaries, they resisted. They're like, no, we want what was given, what was awarded, and we are not going to change it. And they made it their law, made it part of their law. And so this was how thorough Venezuela was in making sure that this boundary dispute was settled, and it was finally settled, and it was drawn out. In fact, a few years later, there was a tri-junction agreement that they had with Brazil. They had to settle their borders with Brazil. And they referred to this same 1899 award to settle these boundaries with Brazil. So they continue to use the award and the dispute settlement of the boundary of the 1899. They continue to use that for 60 years. Thereafter, as we started to approach independence, because we were still the British Guyana, we started to approach independence in 1962. They suddenly brought up a claim that someone alleged, who was part of their the arbitration award, alleged that there was some fraud, and so it couldn't be that the agreement, this arbitration agreement, is now null and void. Now this is 60 years. You can imagine many of you are not even 60 yet. 60 years we went on, they agreed and they ratified and they made it part of their law and everything, this a boundary. And then suddenly they say that someone, but more importantly, when they raised this claim in 1962, so they knew that Guyana was going for independence, and so they started to raise this issue and say, no, we want to repudiate unilaterally this agreement that was part of their law for 60 years. And once again, we were now faced with Venezuela making aggressive claims against it. So because Guyana was about to approach independence, the international community, Britain and the U.S., and Britain felt it behoved us to try to settle this spurious claim that Venezuela had raised. And so I just want to get, after 60 years, when they produced this memo, it was paper, that's a posthumous paper prepared by somebody who had been dead for 45 years. Right? They suddenly produced this thing and said that this person claimed that there was some fraud in the award. Now, I'm an attorney. When you go to claim fraud for an agreement and a treaty that was binding, that you agree that it will be a full and final and perfect settlement, in international law and in law generally, the courts do not take those kinds of claims lightly, because then you look at it, anybody could raise up and say, oh, there was fraud, and so we don't want to honor our agreement. And so that's exactly what it appeared that at that time Venezuela was doing, because they produced this memo that said that there was fraud, and they claimed that this fraud they claimed happened 4 to 5 years after the alleged incident. So, but this was happening just as we were getting independence, and so in the early 1960s, Venezuela sought to unilaterally say, well, we don't want this agreement anymore, which flies against entire international law and international rules and norms. And so this contention set in motion a protracted process in which Venezuela was given every opportunity to explain and substantiate this claim that there was fraud, because he who alleges must prove. That's the law. So they were given an opportunity to say, show us how this was fraud. Of course, they were not able to. And so in 1966, the UK, Venezuela, and British Guyana signed this Geneva Agreement, and this was all to facilitate international diplomacy. But the Geneva Agreement formed the framework for the practical settlement of this controversy, of this claim that you're saying that there was fraud. And because there was no, when they did the investigation, there was no evidence could be produced. So in 1966, so as to not to stall independence anymore for Guyana, this Geneva Agreement was inked. And out of the Geneva Agreement, a mixed commission was formed. They were given 4 years to investigate this claim of fraud. Venezuela wanted to proceed as though the fraud was a given, and they said no. The approach is that you are saying that there is fraud, just prove it. And of course, for 4 years, predictably, they were unable to prove it. And so this mixed commission got nowhere after 4 years, and Venezuela and Guyana agreed to a moratorium, which is like to settle, let the issue go to bed for a little bit, because of course Venezuela continued to use aggressive actions and language towards Guyana in the meantime. So there was a moratorium for 12 years, which is like, let us settle down, let the issue rest for a little bit, and then we will, and we can extend that moratorium if we wish. At the end of the 12-year period, and that was in 1982, Venezuela indicated, no, we don't want to carry on this moratorium anymore. We want to resuscitate our claim that this arbitration award that was binding, that is part of our law, is null and void. And so for the next 7 years, the parties, we negotiated on the next steps. And so in 1990, they eventually decided on a good officers process. So I'm showing you the steps in which we were trying to always facilitate Venezuela in this claim. Meanwhile, all the time, at every single one of these steps, Venezuela has not been able to prove their claim. And in the good officers process, this went on. This was largely a bilateral engagement with a facilitator that went on for 27 years, from 1990 to 2017. And so you could imagine for 27 years, this is what has been happening. They've been trying all the time to go through documents, go through their, to make the proof, but all they really had was this one memo from a dead person who was a junior party to the arbitration award. And so after numerous violations of this Geneva Agreement, because in the Geneva Agreement that they signed in 1966, they agreed to certain norms and protocols that they would not engage in any aggressive behavior. Of course, they didn't abide by those agreements. So after 2015, Venezuela announced that it issued a decree annexing our territorial waters to almost to the quarantine, which is considered an act of aggression. The Guyana moved to other means with which to, that is, a judicial settlement. This is all based on the Geneva Agreement. Guyana decided they're going to move to the courts because there was no other, we had exhausted, and Venezuela had frustrated at each process a way to settle this controversy. And so this is where we are now, that we are before the International Court of Justice to settle this controversy that Venezuela has raised unilaterally, repudiating, that is nullifying by itself. You cannot nullify by one person or one party cannot nullify an agreement that has been signed and inked on the law. And that agreement is the 1899. And our position as Guyanese is that 1899 award that we stood and that was fully there was an exhaustive investigation and hearing of evidence and testimony from all kinds of, from everybody, all parties concerned in that 1899. And those jurists sat down and heard the evidence and gave the award as it was to Venezuela and Guyana. And that is the award with which we are asking that, that Venezuela is now claiming is null and void. And at every single time of the process for us to settle this claim, this controversy, all that was asked of Venezuela is to prove, to provide the evidence, and that is, they have not been able to. And so you've heard of the different processes. They move from the arbitration award, then we move to the Geneva Agreement, we move to the good offices process, the mixed commission, different commissions. They have been, every single time Venezuela has not been able, every single one of those steps, Venezuela has not been able to produce any kind of evidence of this fraud that they're claiming. And that is why we are now before, in 2017, we went before, 2018, went before the International Court to settle this matter, which has jurisdiction based on the Geneva Agreement to settle all disputes. We are clear that the dispute, that there is no dispute to be settled. The only thing that is to be settled is for Venezuela to be able to claim, to prove, which they cannot prove because they've been trying for 100 years, for over a decade, over 6 decades, they cannot prove that this 1899 award is null on account of fraud. There's been no evidence. They have not been able to produce that evidence. And we expect the International Court to rule in Guyana's favor. And we continue to rely on the rules of international law, and we continue to be resolute in preserving our territorial integrity, and that to relinquish no part of Guyana to Venezuela. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Walron, for that detailed explanation. So, 𝘴𝑠𝑒quibo, wave your flag if 𝘴𝑠𝑒quibo belongs to Guyana. This afternoon, I know we have persons from the length and breadth of 𝘴𝑠𝑒quibo region too. So, Bethany, we have from Bethany right through from the south to Regina. We have from Charity to Regina, and we have the entire Pomeroon here too. So let us give a big wave once again that we belongs to Guyana. 𝘴𝑠𝑒quibo belongs to Guyana and no other country. So let us wave high that Venezuela can see us. We are 𝘴𝑠𝑒quibians. Thank you. So I know this is the moment you've been waiting for. Our Vice President has all explanation, because I know for the past weeks our region, everybody is, listening to some negative news out there. So this afternoon we're going to clear all those negatives, and we will want Venezuela to know that 𝘴𝑠𝑒quibo belongs to Guyana. I now take this opportunity to bring our Vice President to the podium.
I mean, don't look for trouble, just ask around.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank the region for arranging this meeting here today so that we can address some of the concerns of the residents of this region, 𝘴𝑠𝑒quibo. Now, before I address any of the issues, I want to say that your presence here demonstrates not only that 𝘴𝑠𝑒quibo belongs to Guyana, but our people want it to remain so forever. And on this issue, there is no division in our country. The government and opposition, we have one position on this matter, that Essequibo has always been part of this country since the 1899 award was made to our country. Today, you will never, as Venezuela will never succeed in changing our boundaries. Venezuela will not succeed in its imperial designs on Guyana. Because if they were to succeed, and we cannot allow them to succeed, then no boundary in the world, no border in the world will be safe. Because any country in the world can one day unilaterally decide to repudiate centuries-old borders on the basis of spurious claims, as was done in this case. You have heard clearly the chronology of events that led to us here today. You've heard about Venezuela claiming that the Great Britain was taking up too much of its territory. They tried to get the United States of America at that time to intervene. The U.S. refused to do so. And finally, in accordance with the Monroe Doctrine, where the United States said that no European power should come into this hemisphere and make territorial claims, the United States forced the United Kingdom to submit itself to international arbitration. It forced the UK. UK didn't want to go at that time. And in 1897, a treaty was established between Venezuela and the United Kingdom called the Treaty of Washington, in which they agreed to the tribunal being established, and that the results of the tribunal will settle the borders definitively once and for all. That tribunal was settled, was established, and they made an award in 1899. You've heard 𝘰𝘱𝑚 Waldron speak about that. And consistent with that award, the boundaries were drawn in 1905, settled in 1905. And then in 1928, the tri-junction point with Brazil was established, all consistent with the 1899 award. For 60-odd years, that matter was settled. And then they unilaterally reopened the issue, repudiated what was established. As I said before, if any country in the world can do this, no border will be safe, not in Africa, not in Asia, not in the Caribbean, not in North America, not in South America. No border will be safe. And that is why we are determined to ensure that Venezuela does not succeed. And that is why we have the entire international community on our side on this matter. They like to claim that the sun of Venezuela rises in the Essequibo. Well, for us, the sun of Guyana sets in the Essequibo. That is our position. The biggest lie told by Venezuela so far has been that they never accepted the 1899 award. It's a lie that you hear from their politicians every single day. But they can't change history. They can't change what is so well documented. They cannot change all of the records that are there for the world to see. They accepted the 1899 award. That's the first lie that they tell. The second lie is that the Geneva Agreement somehow overtook the 1899 award, and Guyana agreed to that. That is the second big lie that they've been telling to their people and the world. The world doesn't believe them. They are lying to their own people because they have no credibility globally. So we have known that we can show by documents that this is not true. The Geneva Agreement never overtook the 1899 award. It agreed to explore their false claim. That is why we describe it as a controversy arising from Venezuela's claim that the award was invalid based on fraud. It was their claim that the Geneva Agreement set out to resolve, not their claim that the 1899 award was repudiated. And there was a mechanism through which to do so. And the mechanism put a central role for the good offices process of the United Nations Secretary General. So, when they claim that the ICJ process, you've also heard from Onish Waldron, that the ICJ process did not include, or the Geneva Agreement did not include the referral to the ICJ, then it's a lie. It's a lie by Venezuela, because that was provided for by the solution, by the Geneva Agreement. The UN Secretary General had the role and the responsibility to explore a solution to the controversy. Can I get some water there, please? And it finally, Venezuela agreed that there would be 1 year of enhanced mediation. And that mediation, if we did not, in 2017, if we did not conclude it, it would end up at the ICJ. So recently we saw Maduro writing the UN Secretary General to say he wants to go back to the bilateral process. That process has ended. He agreed to it in 2017, and now the matter is before the ICJ, and that matter will be concluded at the ICJ. This is our position on that issue. Now, why is there a referendum? Why is there a referendum in Venezuela? We believe that this referendum came about because of the weakness of their case. Venezuela twice sought to go to make a case that the ICJ did not have any jurisdiction to rule on this matter. 2 times the ICJ said they had the jurisdiction, almost unilaterally. So although they claim they don't want to go to the ICJ, and the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, doesn't have any jurisdiction. They went twice before the court and argued that the ICJ should not consider the matter. The ICJ ruled unanimously almost that they had jurisdiction. So today, they now have to present their case. But what are you going to present if you have a weak case? They have no case absolutely to present before the ICJ because they cannot prove that the 1899 award was nullified. They cannot prove that. And so they are now resorting to unilateral actions. So this referendum in Venezuela is to get away, I believe, from going to present their case at the ICJ, since their case is so weak. Now, what does this referendum mean? If you look at its provisions, particularly Articles 3 and 5 of the referendum, in Article 3, they're trying to say that the 1899 award doesn't stand anymore and that the ICJ doesn't have any jurisdiction. And in Article 5, they want to annex our territory and give you, the Cubans, ID cards, Venezuelan ID cards. We don't want their ID cards. It's useless. They want to annex our territory. So those are the questions they're putting, apart from others, before their people on a referendum on the 3rd of December. What this means is that they're going against international law. They're repudiating international law. They are repudiating a peaceful means of settling differences. They're voting for a grab of territory. This must be any part of the world illegal behavior, where a country can just go on a referendum and then decide we don't want to comply with international law anymore. We can go into another country and take over its territory and give its people's ID card because we don't believe in the rule of law or borders anymore. And that is why we have to ensure that this doesn't succeed. This is why the entire world is with us. Let me read to you what CARICOM said. CARICOM insists that the referendum proposed by Venezuela has no validity, bearing, or standing in international law in relation to this controversy. The referendum is a purely domestic construct, but its summary effect is likely to undermine peace, tranquility, security, and more in our region. CARICOM reiterates its support for the judicial process and expresses the hope that Venezuela will engage fully in the process before the ICJ. So there you have it. CARICOM saying, the entire region saying, this referendum is going to undermine peace and it has no validity or bearing in international law. The Commonwealth had this to say. The Commonwealth stands with the government and people of Guyana and with our partners in CARICOM in expressing our concern over the questions in the planned referendum. And the Commonwealth continues to stand for the rule of law and reaffirms its firm and steadfast support for the maintenance and preservation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Guyana. That's the Commonwealth. the Organization of American States, this is what they had to say. We vehemently decry intimidatory tactics that seek to undermine the principles of good neighborliness. We recognize the right of Guyana to welcome investors. Guyana must preserve its territorial integrity and security by addressing its case with Venezuela at the ICJ. The United States of America has made a strong statement that they support Guyana and the 1899 award. The United Kingdom has done the same. Every country in the world has supported us on this matter, and they have all said that the referendum is against the principle of international law. So we have now gone to the ICJ to seek provisional measures. We recently argued our case, and we are waiting an outcome from the ICJ. Now, it's misrepresented that we are trying to stop their referendum. We argued against two provisions, basically, that the Article 3 will basically nullify the process before the ICJ, because that is what they want to do to get away from the ICJ, and that Article 5 is the annexation of territory which is illegal by international law. So we are awaiting from the ICJ a ruling on these provisional measures. Notwithstanding that, we have across the world condemnation. Venezuela stands alone in this, and it will not succeed in annexing Guyanese territory. Now, why is this referendum? Why are they holding this referendum? As I said before, I believe they have such a weak case. They know if they go before the ICJ, they will lose. And that the ICJ will reaffirm the 1899 award as the full and final settlement to our borders. The second reason is political. I believe that the government of Venezuela is faced with elections soon, and therefore they have a very hard time mobilizing people to vote for the ruling party because of the difficulties in Venezuela. So they're using this referendum as a distraction from their internal problems, because you know what the problems are in Venezuela. You've seen the consequences of those problems, where people have fled from Venezuela from hunger and hardship. And therefore, they can't campaign with the same sort of vigor. They can't campaign with the same sort of vigor that they've been campaigning on this referendum. Delcia Rodriguez can't go out and tell people to vote for them, because when people don't have food and job economic opportunities, then they wouldn't vote for you. But they can go and say to them, vote that Essequibo belongs to us and that the 1899 award is flawed, because that's what they've been teaching in their schools for 50 years. A big lie. So I believe that that is another reason why they're holding the referendum. The third reason is that they like to invoke external enemies. So when you want people to support you and vote for you, you say, our country is under siege, Venezuela is under siege. The Guyanese are trying to take our land and our birthright. The United States of America is setting up a military base in Guyana, and they will invade us. You're saying ExxonMobil is taking away our patrimony, our reserves. So you now create a situation, that's what the Venezuelan politicians are doing, where they're pointing to external enemies to distract from their own hardships at home. And this is what is being done. I'm surprised that they didn't say that we're getting some help from aliens from Mars too, because I've seen and listened to the nonsense that they've been talking about. And let me say something. We have been very subdued in Guyana. We have gone about educating our people. We have gone about speaking to our friends abroad, through our diplomatic efforts. We're getting their support. We've been diligently pursuing our case at the ICJ because we're a peace-loving country and we believe in the rule of law and international law. We haven't responded to all the lies that they've told about every single day, particularly from the Vice President of Venezuela, 𝘔𝘴𝘪𝘳 Rodriguez. She has gone to the ICJ and lied to the ICJ that we're mistreating Venezuelans who are living in Guyana and who have come here. Now, suddenly, she's concerned about the Venezuelans who are living here. But these are the same Venezuelans who had to flee from Venezuela because of economic hardships. But now she goes to the ICJ. Well, let me make it clear. We have treated the migrants and the refugees decently in this country. We have done so because there are international laws based on how you treat refugees. If you look at the United Nations report, you will see them concluding that Guyana has treated the refugees from Venezuela better than most countries in this hemisphere. And we have done so consciously based on our obligation on the international law, but also because we know what happened in the past when in Guyana many of our people fled hardships there. They found solace and are living in Venezuela, and many of them are coming back. Many of them have Guyanese blood. They are coming back home. Our Constitution doesn't allow us to discriminate against them, because if your children or you have Guyanese blood, wherever you're born, children of Guyanese parents, wherever you're born, whatever language you speak, you're entitled under the Constitution of Guyana to be accorded all the privileges that Guyanese have. And therefore, we respect our Constitution, we respect international law, and many of them are our own people. So she went to the ICJ and lied to them, saying that we are mistreating Venezuelans living here. The Venezuelans who have come here were not dragged here. We didn't tie them and pull them over the border. They fled hardships. They came voluntarily because they're not happy with not just economic hardships, but the lack of political freedom in that country. Many of them I spoke to have found out there are no opportunities in Venezuela. Secondly, the same 𝘔𝘴𝘪𝘳 Rodriguez has said that politicians in Guyana are beholden to Exxon, and therefore she wants to expose how the agreements that were signed with Exxon. All she has to do is to go back to when we're in opposition. Every single day we speak about this agreement, from then to now, because we live in a free country. People don't go to jail in Guyana for speaking the truth, like in Venezuela. People don't go to jail for their politics in Guyana, like in Venezuela. So we have ourselves said that the agreement with Exxon is a lopsided agreement. We don't need 𝘔𝘀 to tell us this, as though suddenly she's concerned about us. But ExxonMobil was here since 1999. The agreement was signed since 1999. They didn't have an issue then. In 2007, after we settled the Suriname border issue, Exxon resumed exploration because there was a force majeure before that. And they didn't complain about that. But guess what happened? In 2015, we found oil. And so suddenly, they started complaining about Exxon. Now, Venezuela, she shouldn't give us advice on how to manage the economy or oil and gas, because Venezuela has mismanaged their economy and their oil and gas sector. There was a time in Venezuela they were producing 3 million barrels of oil per day. Now they're down to maybe just about 1 million barrels a day. Guyana will overtake them in the next 4 years, 3-4 years, in producing more oil than they are currently doing. So they'll be the last persons to advise us on this. Next is that we are using our oil resources for our people. We have 21,000 people on scholarships now. We're giving our school children a grant. We're doubling old age pension. We're going to have free university. We're preparing the infrastructure of the future. Through our natural resources fund, we're saving some of the money. We're expanding agriculture and creating the grounds for a new economy. So they should not be even trying, especially 𝘔𝘀, to tell us anything about stewardship of oil and gas industry or the economy, because they made a mess of this in their own country. And here we're succeeding and we're becoming a model for the world. The agreement was lopsided, but we made a commitment to make all these changes. We passed a local content law. We passed a new petroleum law. We went out to tender, auction for the blocks, unlike in the past. We've reformed the Natural Resources Fund Act. We've reformed the PSA, changed the conditions, the fiscal conditions of the PSA. So we don't want your advice, 𝘔𝘀, about Exxon. Last couple of days I saw she wanted to tweet to the Guyanese public how we are working with Exxon. They have been, Chevron has been in Venezuela, another big American company, for 100 years now. They were not concerned about imperialism then, and that is a U.S. company. At least Exxon, 25% of the shares are a Chinese company in their activities there. So she tells another lie. She gives unsolicited advice to our people. And not just unsolicited advice, but advice that would be questionable based on their own track record of mismanagement in their economy. The same 𝘔𝘀, the vice president, because she has been the bulldog of Venezuelan propaganda. She's been without any regard for truth. So she invokes Simon Bolivar and Hugo Chavez and saying they're acting in accordance with the vision of Simon Bolivar and Hugo Chavez. Now, Simon Bolivar was an honorable man, never a bully, never fought colonialism, has never sought to oppress or seize land from a small independent country. This is a distortion of the vision of Simon Bolivar. Because he was a great leader in this region fighting colonialism. But they like to mislead people by claiming that they're acting in accordance with the vision of Simon Bolivar. Even Hugo Chavez came to Guyana and said that this border, reopening of the border, was an imperialist ploy to get Guyana and Venezuela controversy between the two countries. And they claim that they're acting in accordance with the vision of Hugo Chavez. Another blatant lie, and that is being told. And then, of course, they want to give you, as I said before, she talks about giving you the ID cards and making you all citizens of Venezuela. People don't want, people are fleeing your country, Delcy Rodriguez, if you didn't notice it, or Maduro. People are fleeing there. They don't want your ID cards. We are happy to be Guyanese. We're happy to live in our own country. We're proud of where we're going as one people. We don't want your ID cards. We don't want you anywhere near our country. And so we need to debunk this propaganda that they're spreading every single day. They spread this among the Venezuelan people, how they are defending the rights of the Venezuelans because somehow Guyana is infringing on their rights. They're not defending your rights in Venezuela. They're defending their own political survival. That is what they're doing. Can I get some more water, please? So, yeah, I drank a ton of coffee, so we now establish, everyone here is clear that they have no factual basis for reopening this border. Everyone here is clear that the international community stands with us. Everyone is clear that they're trying to excite people on the basis of misinformation, peddling lies. I can't go through all the lies that they've told to their own people today, but they are waging this campaign of lies. And we in Guyana, we must be careful that we do not help them by spreading the rumors from Venezuela. What has happened? We have long ago, from Burnham and all the leaders that followed, we have always had campaigns to educate our people about the 1899 award and the boundaries, our boundaries. We all know that every bit of our territory, all 83,000 square miles of our territory, belong to us. We have created an army with the sole purpose of ensuring that our borders are defended, but are the biggest defense of our border, and for any country for that matter, particularly small countries, has been through our diplomacy. And we have done well in that regard because globally, the current map is recognized as the existing and future map of Guyana. So we have done all of this. So every Guyanese is equipped with, especially now in the era of social media, this information. But sometimes we take more pleasure in sharing a Venezuelan rumor than going to their websites and their feeds and pointing out to them the obvious truth that we all are fortified with, that we have, that the 1899 agreement award, arbitral award, was the final settlement. If we do that in large numbers, then people like 𝘕𝘯𝘪 Rodriguez and the others would never be able to mislead their own people. Because under their feed, every time they post a lie, you'd have 1,000 Guyanese saying, this is a lie, here are the historic documents. And then it will cause even Venezuelans to rethink the lies. But sometimes we spread their rumors more than try to fight off the lies that they have to tell about our people. And spreading the rumors have created a lot of unease in our people. Many people are worried. In another part of the media in Guyana, we had to fight off another rumor. They said people are fleeing from Region 1, exodus from Region 1. We checked the number of aircrafts coming from Region 1. It's the same number of aircrafts, small numbers of aircraft, small numbers of seats. One guy said, oh, the ferry is overbooked going into Region 1 and coming out. The ferry is always overbooked. You can never find a space on that ferry. So they spread lies about this. Of course, people are concerned, but there is no mass exodus from any part of our country. And we must not feed into these fears, because that will be precisely what they want, that we also become fearful of them and that we probably start fleeing, and then they would believe that somehow it would embolden them, or they have a legitimate right to our territory. We need to, as a country, fight off all of these things. So what are we going to do? Where are we today? We have, as you know, the lawyers for Venezuela went to the ICJ and said, we don't plan to invade after the referendum. It is just basically an internal issue. He said that, the lawyer for Venezuela said that before the ICJ. Maduro has said to CARICOM leaders, the CARICOM leaders told us, I have no intention of invading Guyana. But, so they say these things in the international forum, but then when you listen to people like 𝘕𝘯𝘪 Rodriguez, you really can't believe what they say. And we must not trust anything that they say. So that means we have to make sure that all options are on the table in the defense of our country. Our diplomacy is very strong. As I mentioned to you earlier, no country in the world, maybe with the exception of the sycophants in Nicaragua, no other country in the world supports Venezuela. They would be totally isolated. And maybe Maduro thinks that this is Crimea, where Russia annexed part of a territory there, and they had some international condemnation. And he believes he can be emboldened to do that in Guyana without consequences. Well, he will be miscalculating. He'll be miscalculating. The entire diplomacy of our country is geared towards keeping our allies strong. and all the developed countries of the world, they made it clear, including Brazil, that the 1899 award is final. Because if you have to change that boundary, if they move to change that, they also have to change a settled border with Brazil. Brazil is not even contemplating that. So we have to keep with our diplomacy. We have to go keep with our case at the court. Because whether Venezuela attends or not, whether they present their case or not, the International Court of Justice will hear the matter to its conclusion, and they will rule on this matter. And we believe we have a strong case that would lead to the upholding of the 1899 award. And fortified with that ruling, then we'll have to ensure that Venezuela complies with it. So our best course today is to continue before the International Court. We have to continue with our diplomacy. We have to still recognize, and that is why you're not going to hear the wild positions here from me today, like they say on their platforms. You're not going to hear rhetoric, all sorts of nonsense that every single day they tweet, and their politicians and their generals, etc., trying to show that they're strong and forceful. Venezuela is not as strong as it thinks it is, because it has no external support. No external support. But we have to recognize that when this border is settled, and it will be settled by the International Court of Justice, it will be settled there, and that's the only place for it to be settled. And we are not moving out of that jurisdiction because it was provided for by the Geneva Agreement. We're now withdrawing from the International Court of Justice as Maduro wants. But we've made it clear, outside of that issue, President Ali has made it clear, the government of Guyana, that we are prepared to talk on any other matter. They wanted to talk with us. We're prepared to talk on any other matter except that one issue, that we are not removing our case out of the ICJ. For too long, the bilateral approach has not yielded the results, and Venezuela has been allowed to prosecute its spurious claims against Guyana. And so, barring that issue, we have to engage. We're always open to engagement, because beyond the settlement of this issue, which we believe will be in our favor, we still have to live together as neighbors. We still would have to set, once the land boundary and the 1899 award has been upheld by the ICJ, we then have to definitively demarcate the maritime boundary. That means cooperation with Venezuela. So we are a party and a government, and there is national consensus on this, that we must not be belligerent or pugnacious like Venezuela is, wanting to fight, trying to bully people, etc. That we are looking to change our country for our people. We want to live well with all of our neighbors. We want to live in peace in this hemisphere, and Venezuela is threatening that peace, and the only country that's threatening peace in our region and hemisphere is Venezuela. And they must stop this, that if they want good neighborliness to continue, that Maduro rhetorically says that he wants when he speaks to CARICOM neighbors. We're open to any engagement outside of that one issue, which is removal of our case from the ICJ. And we believe it's a good approach. But in the meantime, apart from our diplomacy and everything else, they've been spreading lies how we plan to use the United States to invade them. And that we're in the pockets of the United States of America. Well, let me make it clear. We have to defend by all means this country. And that is why last week at my press conference I said that we've been having intense discussion with the United States Department of Defense. And we're not a warmongering nation, but we got to protect this territory and our country. And that starting next week, you're going to see several missions from the United States Department of Defense here in Guyana coming here to work with us. Because we can't trust, we cannot trust. They claim they don't want to do anything, but we can't trust Venezuela, particularly given the rhetoric that is coming from there. As I said before, we're not a belligerent nation. We have never invaded anyone. We don't have any design on anyone's territory. We're not a Trojan horse to invade other countries. But we will have military cooperation, defense cooperation with all of our allies, including the United States of America, that we be prepared for any outcome. This is important for us. And so I want to reassure you here in Essequibo, now and long into the future, you will remain Essequiboans and residents of the country of Guyana.
And outside faces, from foreign places, talk about it.
You'll continue to live in a democratic country. You'll continue, and you and your children will continue to share the prosperity that is emerging in our country. Young people, older people, everyone. And we must have this great sense of pride in our country. Because we're a unique country. We came from different parts of the world and joined the indigenous people here. But we're a proud country. We work together for the development of all of our people and all of our country, regardless of their race, their religion, their gender. This is the Guyana we're trying to build. And we are going to overcome these threats to our border, but we're taking definitive steps to resolve them, like we did when Suriname stopped the oil exploration and we went to the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. And we got a favorable ruling because we believe in international law. The border, maritime boundary was demarcated, the exploration for oil resumed, and today we're an oil-producing country. Had we not done that, we wouldn't have been able to even resume exploration. And so too, in this instance, we have used the Geneva Agreement, we have given it enough time to work from the 1966 to now, and it has not yielded the result that everyone wants. And now we have moved to a stage where within a year or two, the matter will be resolved once and for all by the ICJ. And we have, as you know, we have a great case. Venezuela has practically no case for the reopening. And that is why they're acting up now. They're acting up now because they want to exit that process that they went to and failed to stop it. Now they want to exit it. So we are not going to give up on these things. We're firm in the defense of every inch of this territory. And don't ever question our resolve, Maduro or don't ever question the unity of our people and the solidarity that we'll get from abroad on this matter. Do not ever question that. Don't miscalculate. Don't miscalculate on this issue. So tonight, that's all I wanted to say to you, to thank you in �ㄴ𝑖kwebo for your fortitude and your strength and the patriotism that we see here and in all the parts of our country, from all of our people, from all the political parties in Guyana. This is a unifying issue for all of our people. And we will overcome this. It's just another hurdle on our way to prosperity. And you can rest assured that every single day, this government is hard at work to ensure that we minimize these threats, we address these threats, and we continue to work for an upliftment of our country. Thank you again, 𝘴𝑚. Thank you very much.
There you heard for yourselves, 𝘴𝑚. Let's give another big wave. Thanking our Vice President for that detailed explanation. So I can say to 𝘴𝑚, we are solid. We belongs to 𝘴𝑚. We belongs to Guyana and nowhere else. So I can rest assured, you can feel confident. Continue preparing for your Christmas celebration. Go about your normal work. We have a competent government that is defending us, and that is why we can celebrate and say to Venezuela, we are solid, we are Guyanese, and we continue to remain Guyanese, and we are one people, one nation, one destiny, and to add, one Guyana. And I see our religious leaders are among us here. And I want to say that God is looking over us. We had a little shower, which was blessing, and we had a cool afternoon to listen to our leaders. And we are confident, we are much more confident that we are solid and we are protected. I am not fearful as your regional chair, and none of you should be fearful. Let us all join hands, embrace each other, and celebrate. We are solid, we are 𝘴𝑚ians, and we are Guyanese. Thank you for coming out, and I wish all of you a safe trip back home. I know the Vice President will mingle a little with you, and then you will go home safely and sleep soundly in your homes. I thank you, thank you, thank you.
place of love. We are one Guyana, paradise, our world. इतनी खूबसूरत है, पेश में रहकर चखती हूँ सबब में लोगों से प्यार करने की
Amazed to live in such a beautiful country with loving people in harmony. I'm so amazed to live in such a beautiful country with loving people in harmony.
We are one Guyana, a place of peace, a place of love. We are one Guyana, paradise, our world.
Yeah, some are we born from the hills, some from the low coastal plains. Plenty rice and sugar cane. Same Guyanese blood in our veins. So make we burn out the hatred, time be racing. Can't make that destroy. Six race and share the same space in this 83,000 square miles.
We are one Guyana, a place of peace, a place of love. We are one Guyana, it's paradise, it's our world.
Brother is a brother, no matter which religion is you could have Buddhist.
Not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now. We're gonna make it somehow. We will bend like a bow, but never break. Our fathers came here, and they lived and died here. And we are moving from here, make no mistake. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue saki, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rumanuni and the 𝘰𝑒𝑠𝑠, daytime or night. Though we criticize it, this is our home, we love it, and we mean to keep it. We have that right. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue saki, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass, not one golden apple, not one jamun, not a drop of water from the farmer room, not one cherriga. We are a peaceful people, struggling we struggle, and we don't look for trouble, just ask around. But when outside faces, from foreign places, talk about taking over, we ain't backing down. No, we ain't giving up no mountain, and we ain't giving up no tree, we ain't giving up no river that belongs to me. Not one blue saki, not one rice grain, not one chorus, not a blade of grass. This land is our land now. We're gonna make it somehow. love the open country of the